Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be discussing about the assessment of learning and learning objectives. So here are the objectives. At the end of the lesson, student can discuss the purpose and role of assessment, recall the definition of Bloom's taxonomy, compare the Bloom's taxonomy 3 domains, and create a learning objectives in line with the cognitive domains. So first is, or here are the table of contents. First is the purpose and roles of assessment, revise Bloom's taxonomy, 3 domains of Bloom's taxonomy, and lastly, learning objectives in the cognitive domain. So first is the purpose and role of assessment. Assessment plays a fundamental role in education, serving a variety of purposes that are essential for both student and teachers. Assessments provide a measure of a student's understanding and knowledge of a particular subject or skill. They offer a structured way to evaluate students' progress, helping students identify areas where a student might be struggling and need additional support. Assessments are essential for educational institutions to evaluate their teaching strategies or methods in the curriculum.
Next is we have the Bloom's taxonomy. It is a hierarchical framework used to classify educational objectives and learning outcomes into different levels of complexity and simplicity. The original taxonomy was first described in 1956 in the book Taxonomy of Education Objectives by American educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom and his co-authors, and it was revised on 2001. In the new variant, nouns were replaced by action verbs. Also, the 2 highest levels of taxonomy were swapped. As you can see, in the 1956 Bloom's taxonomy, the highest level of taxonomy was the evaluation and the second one is the synthesis. On the revised version, evaluation became the second highest level and synthesis was replaced by create. The new learning stages are remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So their goal was to provide teachers with a common vocabulary to discuss curricular and evaluation problems with greater precision.
Next is the Bloom's taxonomy 3 domains. So the 3 domains are the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So these 3 domains corresponds to the 3 types of goal that teachers want to assess. So the first is the cognitive, which is the knowledge-based goals. So the cognitive domain refers to the intellectual or mental skills and abilities involved in learning, thinking, and problem solving. And the focus of this cognitive domain is the intellectual skills and knowledge. And example of these cognitive domains are the remembering facts, understanding concepts, applying principles, analyzing data, evaluating arguments, and creating new ideas. And next is the psychomotor, which is the skill-based goals. So the psychomotor encompasses physical skills and actions, tasks, and action including tasks that involve coordination, manual dexterity, and physical movement. And the focus of this psychomotor domain is the physical and motor skills and abilities. And the example of this is the developing sensory awareness, setting up for a task, following instruction with basic movements, performing more complex physical actions, adapting to changes in circumstances, and creating new motor skills or movements. And next is the affective, which is the affective goals. So the affective domain pertains to the emotional and attitudinal aspects of learning and involves feelings, values, and beliefs. So the focus of affective is the emotional and attitudinal aspects of learning. And example of this is the receiving and being open to new ideas, responding emotionally to art or literature, valuing ethical principles, organizing one's values, and characterizing oneself based on beliefs and attitude. And each domain represents different aspects of learning and development. And educators often use Bloom's taxonomy to design effective learning, objectives, and assessments tailored to these domains.
So next is the cognitive domain in learning objectives. So first is the remembering. Remembering, it involves the ability to recall or recognize facts, information, or concepts without necessarily understanding or applying them. For example, recall the basic microbiological structures of bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Next is the understanding. It involves comprehending and grasping the meaning of information rather than simply recalling it. So for example, it explains how viruses differ from bacteria in terms of their genetic material, replication methods, and the diseases they cause in humans. So next is the applying. Applying what they've learned to complete a task. For example, apply knowledge of microbiology to diagnose common bacterial infections and parasitic diseases in clinical scenarios. So next is the analyzing. Breaking down information or concepts into their constituent parts and examining the relationships and structures. For example, analyze the mechanisms of antibiotic resistance in bacteria and propose strategies to combat antibiotic-resistant microbes. So next is the evaluation. It goes beyond simply understanding or applying knowledge. It requires students to analyze and evaluate information in a critical and meaningful way. For example, compare the accuracy, cost, and turnaround time of methods like microscopy, serology, and molecular techniques for diagnosing malaria and recommend the most suitable method for a given situation. And lastly, creating. Requires the learner to demonstrate a deep understanding of the subject matter and the ability to use that knowledge in innovative and novel ways. For example, design an outreach program that includes informational pamphlets, workshops, and interactive sessions to educate the community about diseases like bilharziasis and cholera, emphasizing prevention strategies and proper sanitation practices. So that's all for our lesson for today. Thank you for listening.